to The Kitchen Table, a show dedicated to helping you escape diet culture, gain trust with food, honor your body, and live a brighter life. Hello and welcome back to The Kitchen Table. I am so glad you're here. I'm your host, Alicia Brown, an anti-diet registered dietitian nutritionist. And today I've got Brittany Woodard here with me at The Kitchen Table, and I am so excited to have you here, Brittany. Oh my goodness, talking about all things body positivity and food freedom. You can find Whitney at bodypositive_mom. Is that correct, Brittany? Yes?
Yeah. You can
On
add
social
at
media.
bodypositive_mom.
Yes. On Instagram specifically. You have marvelous content. I love your approach to food freedom. I love your approach to body acceptance and body positivity. I cannot wait to unpack both of these worlds on the show today. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited as well.
Oh, we were just talking before I hit record of all of the craziness with coronavirus. I shared that we tested positive in our family. She was talking about her experiences, all of these crazy things happening in the world right now, as well as kind of going into the holiday season and how maybe food and body stuff, as in previous years for so many of us, can be amplified during the holiday season. So I can't wait to unpack that as well. But before we dive into any of that stuff, Brittany, can you just share with us how you even got into this world of talking about food freedom and body positivity?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of people who dive into this world start off in a very opposite world, and that was definitely my situation as well. I think when you're young and you are feeling this pressure to choose a major for the rest of your life, they want you to choose this career at such a young age. It was a time in my life where I was completely obsessed with food and completely obsessed with weight. My parents were going through an awful divorce, and it was impacting me for sure. And so, of course, when I had to make that decision, I decided, you know what, I'm going to learn more about this food and weight stuff because, again, I was completely obsessed with it. So I go to school, all of that. Let's just breeze over that part because I think it's to become a dietitian is a lot, and I know you know that. And it really wasn't in school where I ever made that connection. It was actually almost the opposite thing in school. It almost kind of reinforced some of the preconceived ideas that I had about food and weight going in. We talked a lot about heart disease and, the good fats and the bad fats and all of that stuff. It was actually much later when I was like, oh, you know what? No. So, right after school, I started working at a WIC clinic, and I usually start my story this way, and never to bash WIC. And I don't know if people don't know what that is. It's like a governmental program. It's called WIC, Women, Infants, and Children. And they have a lot of dietitians who work there because they give nutrition advice and sort of pointers to kind of help moms that are pregnant, lactating, and moms with small kids nutritionally. But there was this sort of emphasis about BMIs and weight loss mostly, and fruits and veggies, and in a way that it didn't make me feel good about my job. It felt like people were nervous to talk to me, and I picked up on that pretty quickly. So I didn't last very long there, but only because I think I also had this thing going on where I was so now I just work every day, so this just every day now. And I was oh no, I can't do that. So then I didn't have kids yet, so I was free. I was so free back then. And I joined the Peace Corps. And so I was placed into a food security program in the country of Nepal, which is right in between China and India. It's where Mount Everest is.
Yeah.
And it was very eye-opening. I mean, I think I got a lot of the self-reflection out of being in the Peace Corps. And one of the big criticisms about the Peace Corps is that it benefits the volunteer more than it benefits the people. And it benefited me a lot. And I got to say, I was not in a place, I think, in my career where I could have made some sort of dramatic change in a country that I believe was like the 12th poorest country in the world. I think it was like all too much for me to take in.
Mm-hmm.
It was so much malnutrition, so much like the living conditions. It was just like really eye-opening. And I think that was really the time where I was like, you know what? This seems interesting, but I'm way under-equipped. Like I cannot as one person do something like this. And so I really gravitated towards the women, because the women were like, they were the backbone of what was happening there. Like without the women, like a household could not survive there. And what I ended up doing there was working in these malnutrition clinics, and it was teaching the mothers how to, use clean water. And, they would see sort of in the Western world that we were using bottles, and they thought that was like the thing to do. But really, the bottles cause more dysentery because of the water situation. And so it was teaching the moms how to use these skills in order to prevent like dysentery in children dying under the age of 5. And then they would bring it back to their village and teach the other moms. And so I think that was when I really was like, this is like a community I want to work with.
Wow.
So I ended up leaving the Peace Corps. I had my first baby, and I started my life. I married my husband. We had another baby. And then during that time, I was working with eating disorders at a behavioral health hospital. And, still I hadn't really heard the message of like intuitive eating and health at every size. But that was when I really gravitated towards that message, because it was really seeing like the impact that these harmful messages around food had with the clients or the patients that were in the eating disorder center. And, I struggled with disordered eating myself, like I had mentioned, when I first got into being a dietitian. And so that was when I picked up even more on, maybe there's something more to these messages that the bad fats cause heart disease, and we should all be, trying to lose weight all of the time. And, those just really silly, crazy messages.
Yeah.
So that's my really long story. I try to make it as brief as I could, but that's really the whole journey that took me to this more positive place with food and with bodies.
I'm so flippin' inspired by this story. Where to even begin, Brittany? I love, my favorite part of your story is where you're in this WIC clinic and it's not feeling in alignment with like who you are. And you pulled the plug and you said, heck with it. I'm joining the Peace Corps. I mean, how amazing and inspiring. And then seeing your passion for working with women and seeing that like total domino effect of just like the inspiration you were able to give to one woman and have it, go throughout an entire village. Just the power of, communication and great nutrition information. But then on the flip side, coming back and working in this eating disorder clinic, when you were there, did you realize, because you mentioned that you also engaged in some disordered eating practices, and I have too. And I think side conversation, a lot of dietitians have. I think a lot of us come into this with like a lot of food and body, like obsession weirdness. I think that's really common and something we could just like totally blow apart.
Right.
But when you were in that clinic working with patients that were struggling with eating disorders, did you see a connection between yourself and them?
Yeah, 100%, without a doubt. I mean, I think a lot of times people think that eating disorders are just wanting to be skinny or just wanting to look a certain way. But I think what I really identified was that my eating disorder had definitely started when my parents went through that brutal divorce. So eating disorders can a lot of the time be a trauma response, a response to stress. They serve a purpose for people. I mean, it's a maladaptive purpose, but it serves you in some way. And absolutely, I saw myself and in a lot of the patients that I was working with there.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting connection. I think many of us also think like, disordered eating and then suffering an eating disorder can be seen as like two different sides of the spectrum, right? And I think what we don't realize so often is that we can engage in very like disordered eating practices, but still appear healthy or appear normal when really inside we're really facing this struggle.
Yeah.
And so can you speak more on that about, I know that you work a lot with women and that you've gone through this experience yourself. Can you speak on a little bit of the difference between disordered eating and eating disorders?
Yeah, I mean, I think you actually said it really perfectly. It's like because disordered eating and disordered eating habits are so normalized that a lot of times there is this very internal struggle going on where it's like you want to belong, and that it all can come off so normal. I think a lot of times when I was working with kids or teens, their parents didn't notice until much later that there was actually an issue, because it's like, oh, they're just exercising more and they're trying to eat healthy. And I think probably for all different ages and eating disorders, it can seem like, oh, they're really getting it together here, but really it's like just the opposite thing, and it can spiral really quickly, and it can be really, really, really difficult to come out of that. But yes, I think the normalization of disordered eating and images too. I mean, what we see around us, the normalization of like bodies on Instagram, is weird, and it's not helpful at all.
I so know what you're saying. And I also agree it's not helpful. I mean, on social media, totally. In the media at large, absolutely. I think it's so true how we normalize disordered eating. We even praise it. Like you're saying, like, oh, you're doing such a great job. But we have to be really careful when we say things like that, because under eating, over exercising, paying too much attention, being in this health pursuit can really lead to unhealthy behaviors. And you're right. Oftentimes we don't catch it until it's too late. And I can speak on my own experience where it was like, oh, slippery slope for a while. I had everyone convinced I was doing the healthy thing when really I was struggling.
Yes.
And I think in terms of the body stuff that we face, it really runs in tandem with having that poor relationship with food. We have this poor relationship with body. And so where in your work right now, either, from your personal experience or from what you saw at the WIT clinic or the disordered eating clinic that you worked in or so forth, where are you seeing like this struggle, this tension between like the food stuff and the body stuff for people?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly just think it's like everywhere. I mean, I think the food stuff and the body stuff obviously go hand in hand, because food causes the body stuff, right? Like that's the message that we're inundated with all the time.
Right.
If you eat pizza, your body is going to look like this. When really there is just like zero truth in that.
Yeah.
And it's become so feared that if I eat pizza, I will gain weight immediately. Like with one bite, I will have gained weight. People really, truly, and when I was in the throes of an eating disorder, I believed that too. And so like a lot of the work that I do is really kind of trying to like look at those beliefs and pull them apart in like kind of a delicate, manageable way to say, okay, so that is not happening. I know where those messages come from, and like, let's look at it a little bit deeper. And a lot of times, like some of the skills that I use is not like, oh, all of a sudden, like everything's cured, right? Like we know that mindset work is so much more than that, because once we get these internalized beliefs about food, they're really hard. I guess probably any internalized beliefs, but
Sure.
They're really hard to shake. Like it's really, even a lot of times you can have very good insight that the beliefs are not true, but they're still there,
Yeah, it's like you can have all the education in the world. You could read all of the books, you could see all of the things, but really to get at the root of those beliefs and, like you said, just shake them. I love that thought. It's like, how do we shake those beliefs and start to unlearn so we can really relearn the truth of what it looks like for ourselves? And I think it's so right and so beautiful how you put that the root maybe of a lot of the food struggles that we have are really more deeply rooted in body struggles, the effects on the body from a health perspective, but even maybe deeper from a weight perspective. Do you think at the root of a lot of our food stuff is actually fat phobia? And I don't know if many of the listeners on here, we haven't talked a lot about fat phobia. Do you want to unpack
Yeah.
That's up for a second.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think absolutely it's fat phobia. Whether or not most people are aware of what that is or that's there,
Mhm.
but this idea that being in a bigger body somehow it carries these negative stereotypes, right? So you become fat phobic because, people in bigger bodies, they're lazier or
She did air
they
quotes.
take care of themselves, just really
Yeah.
silly, untrue things. But again, we are living in this culture, living in this society that continuously tells us that if we don't look like a 20-year-old beach bottle on Instagram, that there is something wrong with us and we need to change that so we can get back to that look or get to that. Like it's achievable for everybody if you just try hard enough. It is it blows my mind
Yeah.
that that is a message that has been sold to us for a very, very, very long time,
Right.
but it's completely not true. Now some people's genetics are not going to go there, and that's totally okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, because of fat phobia, right? Because of this idea that somehow, we become unworthy, and even like morally unworthy, like ethically unworthy if you are living in a larger body. And it, obviously creates a lot of harm.
Right. It absolutely is incredibly harmful. This is something that I wish I knew a decade ago. This is
Mhm.
something that I have, gosh, this pit in my stomach when I think about the work that I did in the weight loss
Yep.
realm, and maybe you can relate in your WIC
Oh, yeah.
experience while thinking about weight management and really what those women really suffered from. And what so many of us suffer from right now is that intense fear of weight gain,
Right.
which drives these crazy food behaviors that keep us really in a trapped state, that keep us really frustrated and anxious about food and about our bodies as we try to fight biology to get back to a smaller size. And I've got to say, Brittany, I love your voice shift
Oh,
when you go into like the diet culture voice. And here's the diet
get into the
culture.
real mode.
I love that so much. Here it comes. I love it.
Because it brings up like so much. Like
Yeah.
I get angry, and sometimes some of the messages I get back on some of my Instagram posts are like, you should try to be like more uplifting. And I'm like, I just honestly think it's like that anger inside of me sometimes that's like I'm talking to the diet industry, like when I'm giving out these sort of like shame on you messages, like
Yeah.
to people. I want to like empower them to be like, yeah, shame on you, diet industry, for telling us these things,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Could I have a comment towards that really quickly? I think a lot of people want just like positive, uplifting. That keeps us on the surface though, if we don't realize that we've been victimized by diet culture. And if we don't get angry about that, we might not change. We might just like be okay. We might tolerate a little bit more of these diet culture centric messages that are impacting us and impacting the next generation,
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times when I show that anger on Instagram, I want to show people that it's okay to have that anger,
Of
because
course.
you should like, again, I think a lot of what you were talking about as far as just like how, I mean, it's like oppressed us, this idea that we need to look a certain way, but I think it comes from, all people just wanting to fit in, right? Like,
Mhm.
and especially when you're struggling with this like as a teen and feeling like, I don't look that way. It's like this idea of like I need to fit in with people, and those are the unfortunate messages that diet culture tells us, like, well, you can if you just do
Mm.
this thing that's super harmful and
Yeah.
pretty much unattainable. uh,
Right.
but it's seductive.
It is. That almost makes it seem like sexy and like they have all the answers when really this takes so long for us to unravel and to get at the truth of. And so for somebody like living in a larger body right now, listening to the show or at any size body, right? Like what can we start doing right now to start getting to a place where we can accept our bodies a little bit more? Like how can we start to gain trust with our bodies maybe?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And what I always say to this question is that awareness to diet culture messaging. Because if you've never heard of diet culture, or you've never tried to like have an awareness to how many times in your life that messaging and imaging comes up,
Yeah.
then you don't know how much it's really affecting the way you view your own body. And so I think when you're at the grocery store and you see the pistachio ripped dude, I don't know if you've seen this before, but I've always seen this for whatever reason, pistachios, like they have decided to use this marketing where they have like this super buff person standing next to the pistachio bin. And I'm like, okay, obviously you're trying to say that if I eat pistachios, I'm going to look like that. Like,
This
it
is
feels like
bizarre.
you're trying to tell me. But that's a diet culture message. That's like obviously a message and an image that they are putting with that product. And so like just even, and it doesn't even have to be like marketing and advertising, because I think that those are kind of the more obvious ones, but even just like comments from coworkers that are like, hey, do you know that we started a weight loss competition amongst us coworkers? Do you want to like get involved in that? That's diet culture messaging. And like even that kind of stuff to just be like, oh, that's what that is, I think does wonders for the way you look at your body, like immediately without even really diving in deeper.
Yeah, that is an excellent place to start. Is just to start spotting the BS, to really start really understanding all of the messages every day. I remember when I was first introduced to this concept of intuitive eating, and I started really seeing these diet culture message. It's like you can't unsee it once you see it. You can't unsee diet culture once you see it. It's everywhere. And I've eased up a little bit, but I felt like I needed to advocate for all like, no, mom, you can't say that, mom. Oh, wait, what? You know, we start saying things differently. You start to develop this different vocabulary. And you start to really live out really the intuitive eating message. I think once you start really understanding diet culture, that's an excellent place to start. Specifically with this body image conversation, after we start unpacking diet culture, how can we start to maybe get a little bit more positive about how we view and see our bodies by extension then thereafter?
I think a lot of it too, and another side note conversation is just the whole word body positivity and how it's, transformed over the years of using it.
Yeah.
But I think the word positivity makes it feel like, well, I'm not being body positive unless I look in the mirror every single day and just love what I see. Like that expectation that being body positive means that you just love your body every single day, I think is an unrealistic expectation, especially in the culture and the society that we live in.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of it is just like self-love and compassion too. So like when you really find yourself beating yourself up, just like pausing for a second and say, is there actually something else going on that is making me so self-critical right now? Like, I think the COVID situation, I mean, I started my COVID journey with everybody in the US back in March.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely think I started being like, it's fine. Everything's fine. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to make it through this thing. And now I'm at this point where I'm like, whoa, every day is a struggle.
Yeah.
And so I think like just that's where self-compassion, this like non-judgmental way of thinking absolutely helps with body image too.
Yeah. Yeah, just getting curious about that thoughts, especially when we get into that downward spiral and asking ourselves that question. I love the question that you asked. Is there something else actually going on? Usually it's something like COVID that brings up or exacerbates all of this other body stuff that we have, it seems. Do you feel like that's true in your experience and work with clients too?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely like we're at home more, and like there's this sense, especially with the pandemic going on, that we should be just achieving these wondrous things every single day because we have all this free time. When really, that's like we're exhausted. We're exhausted from it, But I think also when things become really stressful and it's hard to think about what is really stressful, like I think for a lot of people, this is strained marriages. I think it makes parenting a lot harder, and it can be easier to think about like body and food stuff than it can to be thinking about, all the fights that you've been having with your husband or with your
Yeah.
kids, and so it's almost like it takes your brain to like a different route. And so like just that pausing to be like, okay, maybe, maybe it is the kids stuff. Maybe it is the husband stuff that I should be thinking about more, or not. I mean, you don't have to fix these things during this crazy time either. But I do think it just is helpful to take the focus off of the food and weight stuff.
Especially when the real focus is something deeper or different. I
Yeah.
so think that. And I think, yeah, a lot of us just go autopilot. When chaos strikes in life, it's like, what can I control?
Right.
And that controlling coping mechanism for so many of us kind of shows up as food and body stuff. I
Yeah.
so get that. And right now is a tough time of year for a lot of us, kind of going into the holidays. I talked about this when we started the show today. And typically, we're seeing friends and family and we're all getting together, and it can be super triggering because you might not see these people for a long time. And then there's like, oh, so many diet culture messages from people you love, which is so hard. But this year, actually, you were sharing before the show that like pressure's off. There
Yeah.
might be not a lot of meeting with friends and family this year. I know it looks a lot different for all of us. And I think that isolation, that closeness comes with its own set of maybe negative consequences. Maybe the spirit isn't exactly the same this year. But in terms of like food and body stuff, what can we maybe do or look forward to this year that might look different than other years, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think two things. Like, really, there's this pressure from probably lots of different families to still have, the big celebration, and then there's this pressure from people saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to tell them, like, I don't think it's a good idea." And so I feel like that in and of itself, and just having those discussions amongst
Oh,
members is like so
it's
hard, and
already
you feel a
tense.
certain way, and they feel a certain way. But I mean, if you're thinking of silver linings, like this is not having to get together with a big celebration around food, it kind of does take that pressure off of having to explain to your mother-in-law that you are going to have 3 pieces of pie, like, or, just the little comments that happened, or the body talk, or the diet talk. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of nice to have that pressure off, but that's how I feel. Like, I'm kind of happy about it, but I can definitely see how people would not be happy to not be able to get together like we had always.
I know, my heart kind of sinks myself. We canceled, obviously, my family canceled Thanksgiving. I don't know what Christmas is going to look like for us. But I think, yeah, having that kind of pressure taken off, we can really, focus on our own bodies, our own needs, and really make the best of these silver linings. Not to say that, we won't have to ever navigate diet talk. We're going to have to navigate diet talk. We're going to have to navigate diet culture like we do every single day, so that we can still attune to our bodies and honor our bodies and live in and nourish our bodies as well. But you're right. Maybe we can use this opportunity this year to kind of honor our body's needs in a way that we feel is just serving to us without as many variables.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're definitely right.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing the wisdom that you shared today on the show. Do you have any like final words or pieces of advice for maybe somebody right now who's feeling really dissatisfied in their body, who is really not trusting in their body, who teeters that line between like dieting but not wanting to diet and maybe
Yeah.
struggles with their relationship with food? Do you have any like words of encouragement, like we were talking before, any positivity or encouragement, or just like
Yeah.
pieces of advice for them to
Yeah.
live out the rest of 2020 and get through the holiday season right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is, again, just having that self-love, that self-compassion, that sort of non-judgmental view, picking up like what diet culture is and those diet culture messages. But I also think like, okay, I'm going to share like my favorite quote ever. And I don't know if you've read those badass books by Jen Sincero. But she had a quote in there that, how like there's just like sometimes a quote where you're just like, that is it for me. And the quote is, what other people think about you has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them. And to me, that was like, boom. Because when your mother-in-law is judging your weight gain, or when Jillian Michaels is on her Instagram account talking about size 16, that's about them. That's about their diet culture beliefs. That's about their body beliefs. It has nothing to do with you at all. And so when somebody makes a comment, or when it feels like you need to look or act or be a certain way for somebody else, it's not about you. It's about them. And I think that had helped me a lot in all areas of my life, actually.
And my whole body just had a reaction to that. I'm just like, heck yes.
Right?
That feels like truth.
Yeah.
And that makes it so much easier, that quote, to just say, don't take this personally. This is their stuff coming out.
Right, exactly. And it just, it takes it off of you, and, the self-doubt and the feeling like you need to fix yourself or whatever, when really it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them.
Oh, I love that. And I love like the sass that comes through you, Brittany, when you say that. It just makes me feel like so empowered, so confident. Thank you for that. I am tucking that in my back pocket, and everybody else I'm sure is right now too. Thank you for that. Where can everyone find you? We talked about at bodypositive_mom on Instagram. Tell us more about where everyone can find you and connect with you potentially.
Yeah, I mean, so definitely Instagram is like my main platform, and the link in my bio on Instagram, I do have like a little Etsy shop where I make like body positive posters and food freedom type posters and art, which I think are awesome, just to kind of keep around your house and remind you. And then I also have an online course that I launched recently, where I teach more skills on like how to become more body positive and find that relationship with food and food freedom. So you can find that all in there. And then also my website is bodypositivemom.com.
Do all of the things, everyone. Buy the posters, follow her on Instagram, sign up for the course. Brittany, it has been such a pleasure to connect with you. I also, at the end of the show, just want to plug in that we're both Wisconsinites, and that's so fun for us too. Like, hello from Wisconsin, everyone. There are a lot of people from Wisco listening. So it's just a pleasure to connect with you on so many levels. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you come back to the kitchen table with me at some point. And just thanks for being here. Thank
you so much. And I would definitely love to come back at some point.
Woo! Thanks, Brittany. Have an awesome day. Talk soon.